My name is Emma Collins, and for most of my adult life, I was the person everyone called when things went wrong. Not because I was the oldest, not because I was the strongest, because I always said yes. When my father lost his job, I covered the mortgage for 6 months. When my younger brother needed tuition money, I adjusted my own budget to help him finish college. When my mother's health started declining, I became the one driving her to appointments, filling prescriptions, cooking meals that fit her new diet. No one ever asked if I could handle it. They just assumed I would. And I did. At 36, my life looked stable from the outside. I worked as a financial analyst for a mid-sized firm, predictable hours, decent salary, quiet apartment across town. I wasn't married. I didn't have children. My family liked to joke that I was married to spreadsheets. What they never understood was that stability wasn't luck. It was discipline. Every choice I made was calculated, because I knew someone in my family would eventually need help. I didn't resent it. At least, not at first. Helping made me feel useful, necessary, loved. My younger brother, Ryan, used to call me his safety net. He said it like a compliment. "You always figure things out, he'd say, grinning. "I don't know what we'd do without you." My mother said similar things, but softer. "You have your father's heart," she told me once, while I washed dishes at her house after cooking dinner for everyone. "You take care of people." I wore those words like armor. It never occurred to me that armor could slowly become chains. The shift happened gradually. Small things. My calls started being answered only when someone needed something. Family dinners turned into quiet updates about problems I was expected to solve. Bills to review, advice to give, decisions to make. I told myself this was what families did. Then my father passed away. The heart attack was sudden, cruel in its speed. One moment he was complaining about the lawnmower. The next we were standing in a hospital hallway, trying to understand words like massive cardiac event. Grief rearranges people. My mother withdrew into silence. Ryan panicked. And without anyone saying it out loud, responsibility settled on me like a weight I couldn't set down. I handled the paperwork, insurance calls, funeral arrangements, bank accounts. I barely slept that month. At the funeral, relatives hugged me and whispered the same thing. "You're so strong." What they meant was, "Thank God someone is handling this." After that, I started spending more time at my childhood home. My mother struggled with loneliness. And Ryan, despite being 28, still acted like life was something that happened to him rather than something he controlled. I began covering small expenses, groceries, utility bills when my mother forgot, repairs around the house. It felt temporary. Temporary has a way of becoming permanent when no one questions it. One evening, about a year later, Ryan showed up at my apartment with a duffel bag. "Can I crash here for a bit?" he asked. He and his girlfriend had broken up. Money was tight. "Just a few weeks," he promised. I said yes. 3 months later, he was still there. He left dishes in the sink, borrowed my car without asking, ate food I had meal prepped for work. When I gently brought it up, he laughed. "Relax, Em. You're always so serious." I let it go, because that's what I did. The real breaking point didn't come from something big. It came from exhaustion. One Friday night, after a 10-hour workday, I stopped by my mother's house with groceries. She was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone. "You didn't have to bring all this," she said without looking up, but she didn't offer to help unpack. Ryan walked in 20 minutes later, tossing his keys on the counter. "Hey," he said, "did you pay the internet bill? It got shut off earlier." I stared at him. I didn't know it. Needed to be paid? He shrugged. "Mom thought you handled it." Something in me tightened. I looked at my mother. She avoided my eyes. I paid the bill that night. Driving home, I realized I couldn't remember the last time someone asked how I was doing. Not what I could fix. Me. The following weeks blurred together. Work deadlines. Doctor appointments for my mom. Ryan asking for money just until payday. I started waking up tired. One Sunday afternoon, my cousin Lisa invited everyone over for a family barbecue. I almost didn't go. But my mother insisted. "It'll be good for you," she said. "You work too much." So I went. The backyard was crowded with relatives, kids running through sprinklers, music playing softly from a speaker near the patio. I felt lighter at first. Like maybe I could just be part of the family instead of managing it. Ryan was there, laughing with cousins, beer in hand. My mother sat comfortably in a lawn chair, smiling more than I'd seen in months. I felt relief. Maybe things were finally settling. Then Lisa clinked a glass for attention. "Before we eat," she said brightly, "I just want to thank everyone who helped Mom and Dad with the house renovation. Especially Ryan." People clapped. Ryan grinned, modest but pleased. I blinked. "House renovation?" I looked at my mother. She avoided my gaze again. Lisa continued, "It's amazing what family can do when everyone pitches in." Everyone. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I hadn't heard about any renovation. I'd been paying bills, buying groceries, covering expenses. But apparently, there had been meetings, decisions, plans, and I hadn't been included. I forced a smile. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was overthinking. Then I heard my aunt say, just loud enough, "Well, Emma's always busy working." Someone has to actually be present. Laughter, soft, casual, like it was harmless. I stood there holding a paper plate, smiling politely while something inside me cracked. For years, I had been the invisible support beam holding everything up, and suddenly, I realized they didn't see me as support. They saw me as a resource, someone who paid, someone reliable, someone easy to overlook. That night, when I got home, Ryan was already asleep on my couch. His shoes on my coffee table, his emptied takeout containers in my sink. I stood there in the quiet, staring at the life I had built around everyone else. And for the first time, a thought surfaced clearly. What happens if I stop, hey? Thought stayed with me longer than I expected. What happens if I stop? At first, it felt selfish, dangerous, even like imagining abandoning a responsibility I never officially accepted but somehow couldn't walk away from. Monday morning came, and I slipped back into routine. Work emails, meetings, spreadsheets that behaved more predictably than people ever did. By noon, my phone buzzed. "Ryan." I already knew what it would be. "Hey, Em, can you transfer me like 200? I'm short on rent." "I'll pay you." Back Friday, no greeting, no question about my day. Just a request. My thumb hovered over the screen. Normally, I would have opened my banking app immediately. Instead, I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed, "I can't right now." 3 dots appeared almost instantly. "Seriously? It's just temporary." I didn't answer. My chest tightened, guilt pushing against my ribs, but underneath it was something unfamiliar. Relief. That evening, when I got home, Ryan was sitting on my couch, watching TV. He muted it when I walked in. "Why didn't you answer me?" he asked. "I did," I said calmly, placing my bag down. "I said I couldn't." He laughed like I was joking. "Come on, Emma. I mean it." His expression shifted, confusion giving way to irritation. I'm trying to get back on my feet." "You've been saying that for almost a year," I replied quietly. Silence stretched between us. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. So what? You're just done helping? The question landed. I was tired of being expected to. I need some space, I said carefully. Financially and emotionally. Ryan scoffed. Wow, okay. He turned the volume back up. Conversation over. But something had changed. The next few days were tense. He moved around my apartment like I had personally betrayed him. Cabinets slammed louder than necessary. Passive-aggressive sighs filled the air. I ignored it. At work, I started staying later not because I had to, but because the office felt quieter than home. On Thursday evening, my mother called. Ryan says you've been acting distant? I closed my eyes. Mom, I'm just tired. Well, she said carefully, he's going through a hard time. I almost laughed. So am I said. There was a pause. She didn't ask why. Instead, she said, you've always been the strong one. Don't make things harder right now. The words settled heavily. The strong one. The reliable one. The one who adjusts. After we hung up, I sat in my car for 10 minutes staring at the steering wheel. I realized something uncomfortable. No one in my family saw my limits as real. Because I had never shown them. The weekend arrived with another family gathering, this time at my mother's house. I considered skipping it, but guilt pulled me there. The atmosphere felt normal at first. Laughter in the kitchen. Plates clattering. Ryan joking with cousins like nothing was wrong. I helped cook because of course I did. Halfway through dinner, my aunt mentioned the renovation again. We're finally finishing the guest room, she said. Ryan's been so helpful. I looked at him. He smiled modestly. My mother added, it's nice having someone around who can actually be present. The table chuckled softly. I felt heat rise in my face. Present. I had been there every week for years. Handling bills, managing appointments, keeping everything afloat. But apparently presence only counted when it looked visible. I set my fork down. Who's paying for the renovation? I asked quietly. The table went still. My mother blinked. Well, we all contributed. I knew that tone. Defensive? I turned to Ryan. Did you contribute? He shrugged. I helped with labor and the money. Silence. My aunt shifted uncomfortably. My mother sighed. Emma, this isn't the time. I nodded slowly. You're right. I stood up, excused myself, and walked outside. The cool air hit my face like clarity. A few minutes later, my cousin Lisa followed me. Okay, she asked softly. I hesitated. Then, for the first time, I said it out loud. I feel like I'm only valuable when I'm useful. Her expression sodded. That's not true, she said automatically. But neither of us believed it. I drove home early that night. Ryan wasn't there. The apartment was quiet. I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop not for work, but for something else. My budget? I pulled up the last 2 years of expenses. Transfers to Ryan. Utility payments for my mother's. House. Groceries. Unexpected repairs. The total made my stomach drop. I had spent tens of thousands supporting them. Not once had anyone asked if I could afford it. Not once had I said no. Something hardened inside me. Not anger, clarity. The next morning, I made 3 decisions. First, I emailed my landlord asking about ending Ryan's stay legally if needed. Second, I scheduled a meeting with a financial advisor, not because I was struggling, but because I wanted a plan that protected me. Third, I stopped answering non-urgent family calls. The silence that followed was immediate and loud. Texts came in. Are you okay? Did I do something wrong? Why are you being weird lately? No one asked if I needed help, only why I wasn't giving it. 3 days later, Ryan confronted me. He stood in the kitchen, arms crossed. Mom says you've been avoiding her. I've been busy. You're acting like we're using you. The irony almost made me smile. I'm just setting boundaries. He laughed sharply. Boundaries? Since when? Since now, I thought. Out loud, I said nothing. He shook his head. You know, everyone's been talking about how you've changed. There it was, the accusation. Not that I was hurting, that I was different. I felt calm. Maybe I have... He stared at me, like he didn't recognize the person standing in front of him. Then he said something that finally made everything click. You used to care more. I met his gaze. No, I said quietly. I just used to say yes. He walked away, muttering under his breath. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I doubted myself, because I realized something bigger. My family didn't want me healthy. They wanted me predictable. And predictable meant available. A week later, my mother invited everyone to dinner again. I almost declined, but something told me to go. When I arrived, the mood felt strange. Conversations paused when I walked in. Ryan avoided eye contact. My aunt smiled too brightly. I sat down slowly. Halfway through dinner, my mother cleared her throat. We need to talk about something, she said. My stomach tightened. She folded her hands carefully. Since your father passed, the house has been harder to maintain. We've been discussing options. Options? I nodded cautiously. She continued. We think it would make sense if you helped more permanently. I blinked. What do you mean? Ryan leaned forward. Well, you make the most money. The words hung in the air. My aunt added softly. It would only be fair. I looked around the table. Everyone avoided my eyes. And suddenly, I understood. This wasn't a conversation. It was a decision they had already made. And I had just been invited to agree. For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood. The room felt strangely quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. Help more permanently, I repeated carefully. My mother nodded, eyes fixed on the table instead of me. The mortgage is getting harder, she said. And with everything going up, we just thought... Ryan jumped in before she finished. You're doing well, It makes sense. Makes sense. I looked around the table. My aunt gave me a sympathetic smile, the kind people use when they believe something is already decided. I felt something cold settle in my chest. How much are we talking about? I asked. Ryan shrugged. Maybe just take over the payments. The words landed like a physical blow. Take over. Not help. Not contribute. Take over. I laughed softly. Not because anything was funny, but because the absurdity of it almost made sense in that moment. You want me to pay for the house? My mother finally looked at me. It's still your home too, she said gently. No, I thought. It stopped feeling like my home a long time ago. I set my napkin down. I've already been helping, I said quietly. Ryan sighed dramatically. Here we go. I turned to him. I've paid utilities, groceries, repairs. I've been supporting you for almost a year. His jaw tightened. That's different, Hal. He leaned back in his chair. You offered. There it was. The unspoken rule. If you give long enough, people stop seeing it as generosity. It becomes obligation. My mother's voice softened, almost pleading. We're family, Emma. We help each other. I held her gaze. Do we? The question hung there, sharp and uncomfortable. No one answered. I stood slowly. I need some air, I said. Outside, the evening was quiet. The porch light buzzed faintly above me. I wrapped my arms around myself and tried to steady my breathing. I wasn't angry. That surprised me. I felt clear. The door opened behind me. My mother stepped outside. "You embarrassed Ryan," she said softly. I turned. I embarrassed him. She hesitated. "He feels like you don't believe in him." I stared at her. "Mom, he's 30. He lives in my apartment. I pay for everything." Her expression tightened. "You always focus on money." That sentence hit harder than anything else that night. Money. As if my sacrifices were just numbers instead of years of effort. "I'm not focusing on money," I said quietly. "I'm focusing on fairness." She sighed. "You've changed." I nodded slowly. "Yes." She looked disappointed, like I had failed a test I didn't know I was taking. I left shortly after. No one stopped me. Driving home, I felt a strange calm settling in. For years, I had been afraid of disappointing them. Tonight, I realized something. They were only happy when I said yes. When I got back to my apartment, Ryan was waiting. He stood in the living room, arms crossed. "Mom called," he said. "Of course she did." He shook his head. "I can't believe you made her feel bad." I stared at him. "I made her feel bad." "You're acting selfish," he snapped. "Everything's always about what you've done for everyone." The irony was almost unbearable. "I'm asking for boundaries," I said. He laughed bitterly. "Boundaries. You sound like a therapist." I took a deep breath. "Ryan, I need you to move out." The words hung between us. His expression froze. "What?" "I need my space back." He blinked rapidly, like his brain couldn't process what he heard. "You're kicking me out." "I'm asking you to find your own place." His face twisted with disbelief. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "After everything I've been through?" I almost asked what exactly he'd been through besides inconvenience, but I stopped myself. This wasn't about winning an argument. It was about ending a pattern. "I'll give you 30 days," I said calmly. He stared at me like I was a stranger. Then he laughed, sharp and humorless. "You think you're better than everyone now." I didn't respond. He stormed into the guest room, slamming the door hard enough to shake the walls. I stood alone in the quiet, heart pounding. But beneath the anxiety was something else. Relief. The next few weeks were tense. Ryan barely spoke to me, except to make passive-aggressive comments about rent prices or how hard life was. My mother called less frequently. When she did, the conversations felt strained. Word had spread through the family. Apparently, I was going through something. People spoke to me carefully, like I might break. No one asked why I needed boundaries, only why I had suddenly become difficult. 3 weeks later, I came home to find Ryan's bags packed. He stood near the door, keys in hand. "Found a place," he said flatly. I nodded. "That's good." He hesitated. "You really don't care, do you?" I looked at him carefully. "I do care," I said. "That's why this was hard." He scoffed. "Could have fooled me." He left without saying goodbye. The apartment felt impossibly quiet after the door closed. I expected guilt. Instead, I felt light. For the first time in years, my home felt like mine. But peace didn't last long. 2 days later, my phone exploded with messages. Family group chat. "Can't believe you kicked Ryan out. He's struggling, and you abandoned him. Your father would be disappointed." That one hurt. I stared at the screen, fingers trembling. Then another message appeared from my aunt. "After everything your mother has done for you?" I laughed softly, bitterly. The narrative had already shifted. I wasn't the helper anymore. I was the villain. I put my phone down and walked to the window, watching the city lights flicker below. For years, I had carried everyone quietly. The moment I stopped, they turned on me. And somehow, That clarity hurt less than the exhaustion ever did. The next morning, I received a call from my mother. Her voice was cold. "I don't understand who you've become." I closed my eyes. "I'm just trying to take care of myself," she sighed. "You used to be so generous." I swallowed hard. "I still am. Just not at my own expense." Silence. Then she said the words that changed everything. "Well, if you're not willing to help the family anymore, maybe you shouldn't come around for a while." The line went quiet. I stared at my phone long after the call ended. She had chosen sides. And, for the first time, I realized something painful. I had been part of this family mostly as a function, not as a person. I sat down slowly, heart pounding. The old version of me would have apologized, would have begged to fix things. Instead, I whispered into the empty room, "Okay?" And just like that, the door closed. The silence that followed my mother's call felt heavier than any argument. No dramatic ending. No screaming. Just distance. Days passed without messages. No casual check-ins. Number of requests. No updates about family dinners I was no longer invited to. For the first time in years, my phone was quiet, and it felt strange. I kept waiting for guilt to crash over me, for the panic of losing my family to hit. Instead, something else appeared. Space. I started sleeping better. Cooking meals just for myself. Sitting in my apartment without feeling like I should be doing something for someone else. At work, my focus sharpened. Projects that used to feel exhausting now felt manageable. My manager even pulled me aside one afternoon. "You seem lighter lately," she said. I almost laughed. I didn't know how to explain that removing constant emotional responsibility. Felt like taking off a backpack I'd been carrying so long I forgot it was heavy. Still, the quiet wasn't entirely peaceful. Every now and then, I would reach for my phone, instinctively thinking about calling my mother. Then, I'd remember her words. "Maybe you shouldn't come around for a while." And I'd stop. 3 weeks passed. Then one Saturday morning, my cousin Lisa called. "I didn't know if I should tell you," she said carefully, "but things are tense." I stayed silent. "Your mom's struggling with the house," she continued. "Ryan moved into a small apartment, but isn't helping much. They thought you'd come back around." The words settled heavily. Come back around. Like I had wandered off instead of stepping away from being used. "I hope they're okay," I said honestly. Lisa hesitated. "They thought you'd fold." I smiled sadly. So did I. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. I realized something uncomfortable. I missed my family. But I didn't miss who I became around them. That afternoon, I took a long walk through the city. People moved around me, laughing, talking, living lives that had nothing to do with mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt anonymous. Free. That evening, I made a decision. I wasn't going to chase reconciliation. If they wanted a relationship with me, it had to be different, equal, respectful. Weeks turned into months. My life quietly expanded. I joined a weekend hiking group. Reconnected with old friends I hadn't seen in years because I was always busy helping family. I started saying yes to things that had nothing to do with responsibility. And slowly, I began to understand something. I hadn't just been taking care of my family. I had been avoiding my own life. One evening, nearly 3 months after, everything changed. My phone rang. "Mom?" I stared at the screen. My heart pounded as I answered. "Hi," I said carefully. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. "Hi, sweetheart." Silence stretched. "I wanted to see how you're doing," she said. It wasn't an apology, but it was different. "I'm good," I said honestly. Another pause. "We miss you." she said softly. I closed my eyes. I missed them too. But missing someone wasn't enough anymore. I miss you too, I said. But things can't go back to how they were. She exhaled slowly. I know. The words surprised me. She continued quietly. I didn't realize how much we leaned on you. After your father died, everything felt unstable. I swallowed hard. I was trying to help, I said. I know, she whispered. And maybe we forgot you were a person too. Tears stung my eyes. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was honest. We talked for 20 minutes. Small things. Careful steps. When we hung up, I felt lighter. Not because everything was fixed, but because boundaries had finally been acknowledged. A week later, I agreed to meet her for coffee. Just her? No Ryan? No family audience. She looked older, tired. We sat quietly for a moment before she said, You look happy? I smiled faintly. I feel peaceful. She nodded slowly. I'm learning that helping someone doesn't mean depending on them, she said. I looked at her, surprised. Maybe we were both learning. Ryan didn't reach out. And honestly, that was okay. Some relationships needed distance to breathe. Others needed distance to end. Life settled into something steady, not dramatic, just calm. One evening, standing in my apartment as sunlight spilled across the floor, I realized how different everything felt. No constant calls, no guilt-driven decisions, no quiet resentment, just balance. I thought about that dinner table months ago, when everyone expected me to carry more. Back then, saying no felt like betrayal. Now, it felt like survival. I didn't stop loving my family. I just stopped sacrificing myself to prove it. And maybe that was the real lesson. Sometimes people don't turn on you because you changed. They turn on you because you stopped being convenient. And that's not cruelty. That's clarity. I still help when I choose to. But now it's a choice, not an expectation. The difference changed everything. That night, I sat by my window watching the city lights flicker on one by one. I thought about the version of me who believed love meant endless sacrifice. She was tired. She was scared of disappointing people. She thought being needed was the same as being valued. I don't judge her anymore. She did her best. But I'm not her anymore. And honestly, I like this version better. If this story felt familiar, if you've ever been the one who carried everyone until you finally chose yourself, subscribe and stay with us. There are more stories like this coming, and sometimes hearing them reminds us we're not alone.